Meeting to order. Will you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Okay. We'll move on to celebrating district success. We have employees of the month, Sean Gaston and Rick Peterson. Yep.
Always humble. My pleasure to introduce Sean as the December 2023 Employee of the Month. Sean is a powerful leader and transforms anything he touches. He was a great instructional coach, and he has used that knowledge and experience to become a fantastic administrator. He uses evaluations and walkthroughs to help staff grow, and he leads by example by working to improve himself. He appreciates feedback and is always reading up on new ways of doing things, always in search of improving. Sean has also made huge changes to our school, and that has benefited our students and staff. Our schedule has exploded with new opportunities for students, and Sean has worked tirelessly to make this happen. Sean also works to connect with stakeholders to get insights and anticipate potential issues before they arise. Staff feel heard and supported because of Sean's approach to leadership. Sean deserves to be recognized for all the great work he has done in Albert Lea. Congratulations, Sean.
All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce Rick Peterson. Rick is our master electrician in District 241. And want to just start and say I really appreciate that we have the opportunity to recognize these employees of the month. And Rick is a phenomenal person for this recognition. And I'll read a little bit from a letter of nomination here for Rick. Rick Peterson is an integral part of the district. His dedication and commitment to his work has been exceptional. Rick is the only electrician for the district and can be found wearing many hats, from working with outside contractors on building improvements, HVAC, and also assisting in all aspects of maintenance and grounds. I can personally attest to this statement. Rick is a maintenance worker in our district, can be found handling a large number of tasks, and whatever we throw at him, he seems to do with a smile on his face, and he's always working hard, and we really appreciate what he does for the district. So thank you, Rick. Thank you.
Congratulations to both of you, and I would echo Paul in that this is a great opportunity, so thank you. All right, we'll move on to approval of today's agenda. This is an action item. Is there a second? All in favor? Any discussion? So sorry, yes. I was just testing you. Yeah, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, moving on to consent items. This is also an action item. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent items? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll move on. Sorry, that threw me off a little bit. Now I'm a little off my game, so I better step it up here. So, okay. We'll move on to reports. We'll get it back together, Bruce, don't worry. First, we'll start out with our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, directors, student representative, teacher representative, community. I'll ground us in our mission, and that is to ensure individual academic and social emotional growth that leads to engaged citizens and lifelong learners. It's always great to begin a meeting with a celebration, so congratulations to our well-deserved employees for their recognition tonight. This evening, we're going to take a little bit, I want to present to you and kind of tee up Jennifer, Executive Director Walsh's budget discussion, and really center us in what we'll be discussing tonight. All of our decisions we make centrally, we keep the students at the center. And that is absolutely important. Over a year and a half ago, when I had a humble opportunity to interview for this position, I expressed that this is where all decisions will be centered, and that will continue. Staff, then community, in that order. And knowing when we have budget discussions or discussing our current realities, there are going to be some challenging discussions. I want to go to the next slide, please. When we know, one fact that we do know is when staffing stays consistent and we have a declining enrollment, you will see a budget gap or you will see deficit spending. This is where districts get in trouble. The challenge is when we know that the enrollment continues to decline or it does decline and you don't adjust accordingly, you have major deficit spending. So when we know the staffing, the next two, please, and we know the enrollment, we need to make the proportional adjustments and keep the two parallel and adjust accordingly. And I say it's not cuts. These are adjustments, these are refinements, and we look for efficiencies. These are absolutely important. And when you hear Executive Director Walsh's presentation tonight, it's important to ground us in this. And we know that we do have a declining enrollment. And this is not just Albert Lee. This is statewide. But what we can't control is Albert Lee. And we have to ensure that we keep our focus on the students and their experience in our schools. Go to the next slide. This was from the Association of Metropolitan School Districts in a recent article that just came out. Across the state, they're showing more than $300 million in shortfalls. Even though what was pronounced as historical investments in our schools, this is the current reality. And there's multiple factors that contribute to this, from transportation, significant increases in utilities, food, supplies, insurance, the cost of living, all these factor into the shortfalls the districts are experiencing. Again, what we can control here as Albert Lee is our student experience, and that will be our focus. Go to the next slide, please. So tonight you will hear in a budget update, I want to remind us that the way to generate revenue is enrollment. When you have a declining enrollment, you have to adjust accordingly. If you have an increase in enrollment, you adjust proportionally. Asking the community and reductions and adjustments. These are ways to generate revenue. We know the state has already projected what is going to be provided to schools next year. This is what we have influence on. We need to think about the proportional adjustments. So reduction and adjustments need to be as far away from our classroom as possible. We have legal and obligations and requirements. Those are things and restricted funds. Those are what we are legally required to commit to. Difficult decisions, often emotional, choosing good from good. There's legacy investments that we have to continue to interrogate and look at. We have to ask ourselves, what is the impact on student experience? We have to continue to have the financial sustainability, predictability. That is a commitment to the board. School districts are required to maintain a balanced budget. And you'll hear tonight in Executive Director Walsh's presentation, this will be a revised budget that she'll be asking the board to take action on. But I want to remind us that we are not exempt from any of this that they're experiencing across the state and nationally. But what we need to look at is internally, what are we doing internally, and how do we continue to ensure that we're investing in our students, our staff, and work with the community and the mayor to really continue to make Albert Lee a city of choice, Albert Lee Schools a school of choice. So you'll hear more from Executive Director Walsh tonight. That is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. All right, let's start over here with Neil.
Oh, I'll begin with a short report. I could give a long one, but I won't. Connection with the Education Foundation. It is, we are fast approaching the beginning of one of our major events, and that is the Teacher Grant Program. And so I would like to, Tanya's already ahead of me, of course, because it is the time that Tanya has been doing this recently. Send a notice out to all teachers missing 241 that it is the teacher grant season and they should be thinking about making applications. And the instructions will be included in Tanya's communication. So that's it.
Thank you.
All right, I don't have any committee meetings to report, but I was able to spend this morning serving coffee and Chex Mix with Ashley at Sibley. Thanks for lighting that up. Darcy helped quite a bit, and it was a good experience. I'm glad we were able to do that.
Good. Boy, I've been a busy board member, so, just so you know. Went to the Southwest play, Larceny and Old Lace, and if I could just give you my opinion, I like to see more than one performance. Just as an audience member, those kids worked hard. I worked with some of them on the Christmas Carol, so I'd like to see some more performances, if I could put that in. Went to the pop concert and saw one of our student board members in action on stage. Also the band concert, and I took in part of the VEX robotics tournament via video. Committee work was the Policy Committee, Finance, Curriculum, and the Business Ed Committee. And as far as, yeah, that was a malfunction. Took in officer training with our Chair Nelson last week. I have phase 3 training in April. I took that kind of out of sequence, and then also taking in the legislative chats through MSBA on Fridays. And as a side note, I have the privilege to serve on the Education Foundation and was elected vice chair with Chairperson Nelson, and served coffee today in Halverson. I have to say, it is bigger than just serving coffee. Just to see that building, it was very impressive today. The building's in really great shape. There's a lot of pride in working there, so it was a great experience for me today.
There we go, yep. I have a small report as well. I attended a Teacher of the Year committee meeting, I think it was last week, where we discussed final choices for the venue, pros and cons, and what we were doing there with as far as meal planning and stuff goes. I'll let Bruce touch base on the end of that there. The only other thing I did is I did volunteer a little bit of time at Hawthorne, helped out with their friendship dance and blasted music for a bunch of kids jumping around in the cafeteria for an hour. It was a ton of fun, and there's a lot of energy and a lot of sweatiness going on in there, but yeah, that's it.
Thanks, David.
I attended a Teacher of the Year committee meeting. This year, we're going to have the Teacher of the Year celebration at the barn at Chapel Shores, April 10th at 3:45. And we chose 7 finalists. I'll remind you next month on when it is. And then Sheila and I didn't work. We're at Southwest this morning and really enjoyable. We got informed, how many days left of school now, Sheila?
It was 48 this morning,
Yeah. Right, we were informed how many days left of school, so it was a fun time. Thank you.
Thank you all for those reports. My report, today I was at Lakeview, and that's where my kids went to elementary, so it was so fun. Super cool to see some teachers still there too, and love the reception area. That looks very different than when I was there before, so thank you for that. I attended as well with Gary, the board officer training, really, really good stuff. We'll start to introduce some of the things that we learned there and best practices, and make sure that we run a good board meeting, but also do the good work away from the table as well. So I'm excited for that as well. Then we had a policy committee meeting, and then I also sit on the Education Foundation board, and we're in a unique situation right now. I'll go back. We're gonna talk about policies in a little bit, so I attended, I don't need to go into details, because we will do that soon. But back to Education Foundation, we are looking for some board members. So if you know of anyone or yourself that is interested in serving on the board, any one of the three of us could talk to you about that. Neil is serving in an ex officio position. Yeah. I think he's my supporter, we'll say that, how about that? And then Gary as well, so if you know of anyone or think someone would be good, please reach out to us. We've had some board members term out, and some people that have left the board, so please contact us about that. All right, Corey, you have a report for us?
I answer to both. And unfortunately, I was sent tonight without any kind of a report from our union, but I would like to say that I really appreciated the spring break because I got to spend it with my 8-week-old granddaughter. So thank you very much.
Our student report, Ms. Bervin.
I think it's on. I also don't have much to report. Jaylee is still enjoying spring break. She's in Mexico with her family. But today was the first day of golf practice, so that was exciting. A lot of spring sports started today. And I did sing in the Pops concert that Gary came to. So that's all I got.
All right. Okay. Well, we were wondering. Thanks, Neil. Yep, it was great. Okay, moving on to safe and healthy schools. We have no agenda items there. Curriculum and instruction, nothing there. So moving on to section 10, effective and efficient operations. We have the approval of the revised budget. Jennifer Walsh is presenting.
Thank you, Board Chair, Directors, and Superintendent Wagner. Especially thank you, Superintendent Wagner, for kind of teeing up my presentation a little bit. Darcy, is this, okay, great. Okay, so as in most years, I come to you in March to have you consider approving our revised budget. If you'll remember, last June, you approved what we usually call either the adopted or preliminary budget, especially in the years when there is a legislative session going on. We really go into that budget with a lot of assumptions. We have assumptions on what the legislature is going to do, and that is also coincides with negotiation year. So we made assumptions on what our contracts were going to look like for this year. And so because both of those items, our assumptions weren't exactly the way they turned out, we do have quite a few items for the revised budget. So at each of your places, I did give you a printout of the budget book that was in the board packet. So we're just going to go through these. Please stop me if you have questions. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on any one item, but we'll start with the general fund revenue. So our enrollment projection actually for the revised budget is 127 ADM, or average daily membership, students in what we had projected in June. And this is really the biggest driver of this revised budget. Especially our kindergarten class came in significantly lower than we projected. Really projecting kindergarten classes is very difficult. We know that for many years we had about 240 kindergartners, and that is looking different now. And based on what we see our birth rates, that is probably going to continue to trend at something quite a bit less than 240. So now we are projecting that our enrollment will be 127 less than we projected in June. So that decreased our general education aid by about $726,000. Our basic skills or compensatory revenue are a little over $200,000 more than we projected last June. You'll remember that we had this between-term unemployment. This was something new this year. We did not really have any idea what it might look like when we had our adopted budget in June. What it turned out is that we had $128,944 in claims. And so we got that reimbursed to us. The legislature did set aside $135 million to reimburse districts. At the conclusion of this first year, there was about $40 million requested in reimbursement. So we anticipate that at a minimum, we will have another year of full reimbursement, but it is also on the legislature docket or discussion that they might have more permanent funding in place to reimburse districts. Paraprofessional training, these next three items are really things that we knew were coming into play from the legislature. We didn't really know the dollar amounts for our district. We didn't totally understand the requirements of what it could fund. Now we have a better understanding of them. So paraprofessional training, school library aid, and student support personnel aid. These are three new funding streams. Fortunately, these are items that qualify for this revenue use are things that we already have in place. So these will simply be new revenue streams. There are no new associated expenditures with those. Our English learner aid, higher than anticipated. Then the extended time and a little further down, the alternative learning center aid. Extended learner or extended time aid is really a reflection of our targeted services after school and summer school. Last year we had a very, we didn't have as robust of an after-school program as we have this year. So when I was doing the preliminary budget last year, I made the assumption that this year's program would reflect pretty closely what we had last year. We have a much more robust program this year, and so we are anticipating some additional aid. There are additional expenditures, however, as we fund that program. That ties in with the Alternative Learning Center aid. They are both in the same restricted account. And we look at what we anticipate our ALC enrollment to be. They generate funding just like our students that are not at the ALC, but those revenues and expenditures fall into one of our restricted accounts. American Indian Aid, just not something that we did not have in the preliminary budget. We do get some aid that helps us with our non-public transportation, so we do transport students who attend St. Theodore's and the Hollandale Christian School. It is not something that we track separately, but we just get aid based on what their enrollment is. Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip ahead? Thank you. Okay, thank you, Darcy, for doing that. And then, okay, and so then the federal aids and grants. So this is a really big dollar now, $1.3 million. We knew, and this is really the ESSER funds, the remainder of the funds that we got associated with the COVID pandemic. We knew that we still had these funds available last June, but we were still generating our plan for these funds. So neither the revenue or expenditure were in the preliminary budget. So total general fund revenue increase of about $1.5 million. And then when we look at the expenditures, again, the most significant revisions, salaries and benefits up $929,000. And this is based on the settled contracts for wages and benefits. This really reflects this revised budget, actual staff that we have in place. We make assumptions in June You know, we know some staff are leaving. We make assumptions where new staff coming in might be placed on a salary schedule. Now, this is our actual staff that we have. One thing that I did not put in the book, but I included here, part of that $929,000 is the expenditures for the between-term unemployment. So we had matching expenditures to that revenue. Supplies and materials, just under $400,000 more in the revised budget. Much of this is part of that federal grant, the grants that I talked about earlier. The instructional tech devices, $186,000. Project exploration supplies. Project exploration, as a reminder, is this very popular program that we're running after school, really for grades K through 12, and it's our traveling trailer that goes to all the elementary schools. We've got Fat Tire Bike Club at the high school. We've got pickleball at the high school. Our middle school sports are all run through this project exploration. And so I just needed to up the supply budget that I had in for that. And then instructional software. Under capital expenditures, again, looking at the federal grant, as I've put in several of my board updates, one of the primary uses of the funds that we had remaining is that we are replacing the classroom furniture in our elementary schools. We are really excited to have this opportunity. There really are no other funds that we would be able to tap to this degree. Every classroom that didn't already have new furniture in the last couple years will have new student either desks or tables, new chairs, kidney tables, wobble chairs. All of our classrooms at the elementary level are really going to look quite a bit different. All of this furniture is flexible, easy to move around, easy to group and regroup as instruction changes throughout the day. And then long-term facilities maintenance. Assistant Director Paul Durbon and I are really working to refine how we budget our LTFM summer projects. Most of our big projects occur over the summer, but if expenditures or invoices come in prior to June 1st, it comes under one fiscal year. If they come in after June 30th, then they are in the next fiscal year. So we're just trying to get better at budgeting which fiscal year those expenditures are going to occur. So total general fund expenditure increase is $1.9 million. And then looking at the way we calculate our unassigned fund balance, that now is projected to be 11.94% at the end of this fiscal year. So slightly under our 12% goal. I know that we've talked about this on more than one occasion, that we could anticipate this. And so not a lot under, but it is slightly under the 12%. So that really rounds out our general fund. I'll move to food service. This is the first year of our universal free meals. So this, again, is a little bit hard to have a budget that I feel like really spot on. I am anticipating state revenues, and the state is who is picking up the universal free meals cost. I'm anticipating that to be up over $300,000. Federal revenue down a little bit, about $56,000. And then really looking at our pupil sales being drastically down because we do have universal free meals. So that is not a surprise. I probably should have projected this all maybe a little bit better in the preliminary budget, but we were really unclear as to what it was going to look like. And then purchase services, and this is primarily our contract with Chartwells, as they do all of our, they hire all of the staff with the exception of about 3 people. The last year's actual fund balance was $699,000. We're projecting this year's fund balance to be about $663,000. I did mention to the Finance Committee there is actually a restriction on how large your food service fund balance can be. And they look at your cash reserves at the end of the fiscal year. And if those reserves are more than 3 months operating expenditures, you have to file a plan with the state of how you are going to reduce this fund balance. We're not quite there yet, having to file that plan. The good news is, even though the fund balance is very large, we have taken the opportunity to replace a lot of equipment throughout the district, whether it be stoves, ovens, steam tables, dishwashers, hot water dispensers. So we are really making a concerted effort, as we've got this very large fund balance, to make sure all of our equipment is in really good working order. Community Education Fund, we just decided we weren't going to do any revisions for this revised budget. We may have a few revisions for the final budget that we will bring to you in June in conjunction with next year's preliminary budget. Then the Building Construction Fund, which is Fund 6, we added the revenue and anticipated expenditures for our 2024 A bonds that we just sold and that we will be using for the Southwest Lakeview and High School projects. We know exactly how much we got in revenue, and we're just making some educated guesses on how much of that we will spend here in this current fiscal year. Then our self-insured internal service fund. So this is our our self-insured health insurance. We have been very proud, and rightfully so, of the large fund balance that we've built in just 4 years. We have been extremely lucky that we have had relatively low claims years, those years. We are experiencing something different this year, as we knew we would. Claims fluctuate from year to year. This just happens to be a high claims year. So we do anticipate that that fund balance is going to reduce from about $4.6 million to $3.9 million, or just under, almost $4 million. Fortunately, we had built up such a large fund balance. We will have our insurance committee meeting, I believe it's on April 1st, and Aaron Casper and our team from National Insurance Services will be analyzing this for us and making a recommendation of what type of premium increase we will assess to ourselves. Again, fortunately, we entered this year of higher claims with a very, very healthy fund balance. And with that fund balance, we should be able to temper the higher premiums than, maybe, I'm just going to use an example. Maybe we would say we deserve a 6% increase, but we may be able to keep it at a 4% increase because of our high reserves. We will be talking to you more about that after the insurance committee meeting. So that really is the highlights of the revised budget. These next pages in your book, and really what you see up on the board, you see the general fund, and then the food service, community ed, building construction fund, debt service fund, custodial fund, which just happens to be one scholarship, our self-insured internal fund, and then our other post-employment benefits funds. This is how it lays out in a spreadsheet form, and this is actually what I will be asking you to approve. The factors, the next several pages of your book are actually just some charts and graphs. I won't be going through them in this presentation. It is amazing, though, from year to year, from budget to budget, these percentages, whether it be salaries and benefits, the amount of funding we get from the state as opposed to the federal government, the percentages tend to be unchanged from Not only from year to year, from budget to budget, but from district to district. You could probably look at 90% of districts have these percentages that would be within 2 or 3% of where we are. I do want to just talk briefly about factors that are impacting our district. Declining enrollment, in my opinion, is the single most pressing challenge facing our school district. And looking at our enrollment projection model, projecting kindergarten classes, closer to where they are this year than where they've been in the past, we are just going to continue to see some decline to our enrollment. The biggest part of this is because we have lower incoming kindergarten classes than we have outgoing senior classes, and it's that difference that is driving the majority of our enrollment decline. But in an environment of declining enrollment, it really is incumbent upon administration and school board to make sure that we make adjustments accordingly. And it's across the board. It's, it's everything from staffing to legacy programs that we might be offering that maybe aren't giving us the return that we like to see. But as we move forward through this, we will, as Superintendent Wagner said, we will always be keeping students at the center of adjustment decisions that we make. Next year will be the second year of the biennium, so we will have fewer budget assumptions, which actually makes a preliminary budget much easier to calculate. We know that we're getting a 2% increase on the basic formula. All of our contracts are settled for next year, so next year's preliminary budget is not quite as big of a challenge as it was for this year's preliminary budget. So I think before I ask you to approve this budget or ask questions, and maybe that will be after a motion, I do want to talk a little bit about our financial projection for next year. So we know now that our projected enrollment is going to decrease by another 50 ADM, or average daily membership. We know what our general formula increase is going to be, 2%. We know what our fund balance target is, 12%. When we look at those things and where we know our contracts are, and making some assumptions for where we think inflation will take us, we are looking at a budget of adjustment of about $1.2 million for next year in order to stay at our 12% fund balance target. So that's really what drives the adjustment, is that 12%. We have already been working as an administration to identify those things across every sector of our organization, keeping in mind students, staff, community as we look at those. Our plan is to bring these adjustments to our May work session, and those are then the adjustments that we will be putting into our preliminary budget for next year. So with that, I would ask the board to approve the 2023-24 revised budget.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and second, and now we will have discussion on the preliminary budget revisions.
Revised budget.
Yes. Wait, hold up.
I'm sorry. Oh, Bruce said.
Mr. Olson has the floor.
Every morning I sit at Hy-Vee with a bunch of buddies at 6:30, and I watch that doggone Alden Conger bus pull up, and 14 kids get on it, and I'm sure they stop some other place in town, and I'm sure Glenville Emmett has a bus to come to town. Do we follow up with them parents do we know why they're enrolling out of the district? Do we follow up with the parents at all, or meet with them, or?
I think Superintendent Wagner is going to address that question.
Yeah, Director Olson, that is, we get a weekly update on incoming, on what that delta or that number looks like incoming and outgoing. And Danny Bryant does an amazing job of checking with those families. And a lot of it is, like we had a significant shift in this past week, but there are many families that moved out of state. There's all kinds of circumstances that impact. There's personal choice, but we do reach out to the families and ask for them, what are, and then we also receive families as well coming to Albert Lea. So that goes back to our decisions to ensure that daily experience for our students is high quality.
Just some observations. It's complicated because you have indicated that we have a significant number of fewer students this year. And if that were to remain constant, that number that we have as a result of reduced kindergarten class last year, if that number remained constant, we'd be experiencing that drop theoretically for the next 12 years, because that's
Yes.
always subtracted from a graduating class. So we are going to be challenged for a long time unless we somehow manage to increase the number of students that enter our doors so that it equals or maybe exceeds the number of students that leave there. So this is going to be a challenge. And you're right, when you have fewer students, we are a people industry. That means that it theoretically takes fewer people to serve those fewer students. And as we discussed at our financial meeting, a committee meeting before this meeting, that reduction is not just going to be teachers.
Correct.
It will be across the board. And we will need to, once again, consider the challenge of some rather creative method of dealing with that difference in staffing. And then one other mathematical phenomena. The 12% balance target that we have moving into the future becomes 12% of fewer dollars. So that 12% balance that we want to have that's actually kind of softening news, because that translates to fewer dollars.
Right.
So we theoretically would be cutting, it wouldn't be as drastic. I mean, right now, 12% of our budget is a fair amount of money, but 10 years from now, it would be less, so we would have to cut not as much.
Less in actual
So you don't
dollars,
cut
probably.
percents, you cut dollars.
Right, right. And we're calling it adjustments. And I
Right.
thought Superintendent Magner really made that point very poignantly. We have to adjust our spending with our enrollment. That is, that's really just not theoretical, the word you used. It's an absolute necessity, because we've seen, and, Rochester comes to mind because they had a really good graph on, enrollment going down and their staffing actually going up. And that is a formula for disaster. And we're at the cusp of this, because this is really we're really experiencing declining enrollment for the first time in a long time. But we have to stay with that or ahead of that to keep our district financially stable.
If I can. Yes, thank you. It is, again, I like to look at the, some mitigating factors to offset all the bad news. The staff cuts do not have to be a drastic incursion on the people that are employed, because people retire
Right.
every year, so we just wouldn't be replacing.
Exactly, right, yes. And, that is what we anticipate for this coming year, that these will be just not replacing staff that leave for other reasons, retirement, just decide to go do something different. So that's what we anticipate.
Thank you, Director Squire. I think you made some valid points, but going back and connecting with Director Olson, we have to ensure that we retain our families that we have. And that is one area where we can control or influence that daily desired experience for our students and staff. And also know there's that proportional spending, and that it's not just staff per se. We have to look at and interrogate all of our spending and pull back and look at our efficiencies as well. So staff is just one area, even though it's about 78% of our spending, but there's some proportional pieces there as we look at our student enrollment as well. So I believe you said it very well. There's some other factors also that influence us.
I may make one other. As I announced to the Financial Committee meeting that we had, our mission, and Superintendent Wagner expresses it well, our mission is to serve the clients that we have, the students, to provide the best educational experience they can have. That's our mission. Our mission is not to directly to increase the population of Albert Lee. But if we could assist that process a little bit, collaterally, it would serve our more obvious mission of serving students, because we wouldn't have to make these cuts. So I think I will always insist that even though involvement in community, promoting community events and community transactions is perhaps a little bit extraneous to our stated mission, but there's a connection there. So we need to work with the city, work with the county, and do everything we can to encourage those people not to go to some other school, or to encourage people to move and settle in Albert Lee and have families and increase our population.
Jennifer, I have a question. The average daily membership number, is that impacted by not just enrollment, the number of students we have within the district, but attendance?
No.
It's not impacted by attendance?
No. If a student is not dropped from average daily membership until they have 15 consecutive days that they are not with us. A student going on vacation for a week does not impact our ADM. So it is not impacted by, or it is also not impacted if we have an e-learning day, or even if we would just have a snow day and not do e-learning. That does not impact, none of those things impact our average daily membership.
Okay, thank you.
Director Olson.
Thank you for that. One more quick question. The building construction fund,
Yes.
we're starting out with $776,000 and ending up with over $2 million.
Yeah.
Why aren't we spending that money?
Okay, so the amount we have in there at the end of last year, that was what was left from the $1 million in bonds we sold for our safety projects. So at the end of last year, we still had that much left. Now we've sold bonds for the projects at Southwest, Lakeview, and the high school, and that's bringing in the $3.8 million. Yes, you're welcome.
I just have a couple. Can you talk a little bit about what goes into the instructional software? Because we kind of went over that, but it's really what's driving getting under the, that's a controllable potentially, maybe not?
Controllable, yeah. So we've really gone away from, some of our instructional supplies and more toward electronic software options. So this falls under Director Frank's purview. And as we look at our curriculum expenditures, we're seeing a lot more of it falling under instructional software rather than some hard goods. And as we make decisions to increase uses that way, that's what instructional software is.
That's helpful. Also, more of a statement. We know that census drives our predictions, right? The enrollment is based on who's being born in Albert Lea. We know that some folks choose to go to other school districts. The statement is, we also, the balancing act, in my opinion, is making sure we're providing that great student experience. So we're attracting people, and I would love to see that even though we have people that make the choice to leave the district for whatever reason and go open enroll somewhere else, I have to believe that the offerings that we have here in the great school district we have are attracting folks to come to our district as well.
Yeah, and we do have students who open enroll into our district, certainly.
All right, any further discussion? All right, it has been moved and seconded, and I will ask for a vote. All in favor of? Say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Moving on to our next agenda item, policies for review. Presenter, the first policy, 10.2, is 10.2 is the policies for review. 10.2.1, policy 901, John Double, Tanya Franks, and Kathy.
Good evening, Board Chair, Superintendent, and Directors. Before you are a smaller list of policies. The first one, John reviewed in his new role under Community Ed, was to take our current Community Ed policy, which had not been revised in a while, and align it with the MSBA recommended policy. So you see in front of you the MSBA recommended policy, which has virtually everything that is in our current policy, except for those items which discuss finances, which MSBA recommends you reference policy 702, which has to do with accounting and finances. So what we had in the past really is now a change recommended by MSBA. John also is recommending that under regularly scheduled early programs, that because we have a very robust early learning program, probably more so than other school districts, both early learning, early childhood family education, early childhood special education, as well as the community ed program, adult basic ed, those are regularly scheduled in our building, in particular here at Brookside. So they should take precedent as a regularly scheduled program over other community ed programs. So that is John's recommendation. Other than that, the policy is pretty straightforward, and I believe we addressed most of the concerns of the committee. And if you have any questions on that one, I'll defer to John.
So I will ask the board, do we want to take these policies on an individual basis? They're all action items. Should we do that? As a whole, okay. So any questions specifically for John then while he's here? We will have discussion at the end as well, but while he's sitting here, if you have any questions about this policy. All right, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Moving on to policy 613, graduation requirements. Tanya.
So Tanya's going to speak to this policy. You've seen it before, and she's got some revisions to it.
Yep. So I actually previously brought policy 613 forward, and it was board approved on January 16th. What we brought forward on January 16th was the MSBA model policy updates. What I humbly admit neglecting to add our local updates. So our local updates were the addition of personal finance and career exploration. And then that adjustment, again, we discussed at policy committee, I neglected to put the local updates in there, is the global studies piece and the elective adjustment. So our overall graduation requirements for Albert Lee High School students would be 46 credits to 48 credits. And then again, that adds in the personal finance requirement and the career exploration class that we would like to build in for our 9th or 10th grade students.
Tanya, at the policy committee, you mentioned something about total credit requirements and how we were lower.
Yeah. So at the policy committee meeting, I highlighted for the group that we did a crosswalk of the schools across the Big Nine. And of the schools across the Big Nine, the lowest being 46 semester credits to graduate, the highest being 52, but I will make a note that that 52 credit district also works on a block schedule, so that makes it look a little bit different. And then there was a range of variation from there. So in doing that crosswalk with the Big Nine, we were on the lower end. 48 requirements puts us right in the middle when we look at all of the Big Nine districts. Owatonna is the 52 with the block schedule, yes. Okay.
All right, any other questions for Tanya? Thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to policy number 406, public and private personal data.
So the next four policies all come out of the 2023 legislative session, which is, as we've talked about, we're just moving through and adjusting our current policies. This is something we currently already do, and that is we allow data under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, the Minnesota Labor Relation Act, and the Minnesota Employee Labor Relation Act. Allows us to disseminate information when requested by local labor unions. So, and it's something we already are in line with, and now we put it in statute. So that is under 4F, allowing us to disseminate information to labor organizations.
We'll move on to 410.
So 410 is on your page 6, really just adjust something that due to the new Parenting Leave Act is not necessary for districts to have in their policies, where it discuss some minimum requirements for qualifying for leave. The new the new Leave Act really addresses this for all our employees. So MSBA recommends that you strike that language from your policies.
Any questions on that? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Policy 419, tobacco-free environment, possession and use of tobacco.
So this is a clarification, and you received some information after the policy committee meeting. There was some questions on this, and Tanya provided information, and it really addresses our American Indian students that they may carry a medicine pouch with loose tobacco in observance of traditional, spiritual, or cultural practices. And they must be a member of an Indian tribe and must be in observance of that practice. And as we explained to the committee, we do have funds, as Jennifer said, that come our way because we do hit the threshold of 5% of our student population are identified as American Indian.
Any questions or comments? Okay. Move on to policy 506, student discipline.
So again, this is something that we already are, I have identified. The first is just a clarification in the definition of our students, and that the recommendation is that we identify students as students with a disability and not identify them as disabled students. So you'll see on page 15, that is a change in that definition. And then the last thing is the legislature did pass a statute under section 120A.425, that if you want a copy of it, I have it here, but I won't read that to you. We already are practicing this in the school, and that is our early learning and our K-3 students must be treated differently when it comes to the use of exclusionary practices, and it's very well laid out in our current procedures. We've been acting on this since the fall. We're now just putting this into your policies.
Any questions, comments on policy 506? Okay. Is there a motion to approve these policy recommendation? Jane? For a second? It has been moved and seconded that we approve the policies as one approval. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. I'd like to say you were done with 2023, but you will see more in June, but not for me.
Thank you so much. Before we adjourn, I'll just remind the board that we have a study session on Monday, April 1st, and our next regular meeting will be April 15th. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is this second? Second. Meeting's adjourned.